So the press conference from Wednesday was a pretty good press conference. We got a few answers on why the Colts did the cuts the way they did, why they only kept 4 receivers. You cut Isaiah McKenzie, brought him back only an hour later. You cut Darius Rush. Chris Ballard goes through and he talks about some of the most questionable decisions, the most questionable actions that they made before the roster cut deadline, and why the final roster is what it is. Now, I did think they talked about Jonathan Taylor a little too much. The presser was 30 minutes long. They talked about Jonathan Taylor for 22 minutes. It was, I wanted to hear about some more things, but it is what it is. He's one of the more premier players in the league. All drama. Media guys are going to be all over that. So, first of all, we're going to talk about Chris Ballard on JT. That was part of the interview, quite a bit of it. And then we're going to go into and talk about why I made some of the cuts. But the Jonathan Taylor thing is majority of it. So, I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. I'm going to go through it, give my thoughts on it, try not to take too long. And so, first thing we got here is, I underlined it too. Chris Ballard says he won't quit on Jonathan Taylor. This is something you really like to hear from your general manager, from a leader, from someone who is in charge of the roster. He won't quit on a player that, even though times are difficult, he's shown he can be a great player, and he's shown who he is before. That, is he really, is he just putting on a show? Is his agent lying to him? That's something we'll talk about in a few minutes. He says he won't quit on Taylor. And that's one thing I love about Chris Ballard. Now, on the other end of that, you could, kind of say that maybe the Colts could have gotten something out of Jonathan Taylor while they could have. But honestly, I think it's in the best interest of Chris Ballard to try and work through things with Jonathan Taylor. And if it doesn't, oh well, you trade him next year, right? Or sometime during the season, whatever. It sucks. We don't want to see JT go. But I do like that Chris Ballard isn't just going to give up on the player just because they're going through a rough patch and the time is getting difficult. He did tell players, he did say that he tells young rookies, these young players coming in that, there's going to be a point when they disagree, but it will most likely be about money. We know he cares about the players. We know he's big on building these relationships, and that's a very good thing. Now, I think his heart can get in the way of, his heart got in the way of this team going from good to great a couple of times. Not going to get into that too much, though. I really don't want to. But Jonathan Taylor, but he says he won't give up on Jonathan Taylor, and that's one of the things that, that's one of the good things that come with him having not just a good heart, but him being firm and, making sure that he doesn't give up, and he makes sure to follow through and try his absolute best to keep one of our better players. And, I wouldn't, think it would be necessary to put this much effort into keeping Taylor if he didn't have a young quarterback that needs as much help as he can get. And, of course, the impact that Jonathan Taylor makes on the team, the organization, the city, and, the game in general. He makes a big difference in the passing game, and, not having him could probably make it a lot more difficult on Anthony Richardson developing. But he's also stated that, a young quarterback doesn't need a special running back to be, to develop into a QB1, into a very good quarterback. So he says he won't quit on Taylor. Also says relationships are repairable. And they're going to have to work through these difficult situations. He's also said that, now we're going to talk about him being on the PUP list. So JT been on the PUP list. Chris Ballard talked about it a little bit. So he said he will not put Jonathan Taylor out there injured. It's not fair. He's still rehabbing. He's still in pain. He's not 100%. So, is he telling the truth? I would think so. But, I think maybe Jim Irsay jumped the gun a little bit on talking about Jonathan Taylor and, during the offseason saying that his ankle is better, it's fully healthy, he will be ready to go week 1. I think maybe he was being optimistic, or Jonathan Taylor was lying and saying that his ankle is better, so maybe he would get the contract but when he came to camp, filled the physical, it was reported that he was having a back injury. He suffered a back injury in Arizona when he was training. So, someone's got to be lying there. Now, I do think it's Jonathan Taylor's and his agent. I think Jonathan Taylor's agent might be lying to Jonathan Taylor. And this is because, now, I am take this for a grain of salt. You don't know what's true, you don't know what's not. And that's what I'm doing. But I'm just going off of what Chris said because that's all we have. That's all we have to go by. Well, there are other contexts and clues, but I mean, honestly, Chris is our best bet. He's proven that he's been very honest. He's been very consistent in pressers and interviews. He's been very honest, and I love that about Chris Ballard. Now, he's as honest as he could be. Sometimes he can't be fully honest. Sometimes he has to kind of dance around the question, and he does it a lot. And, that's kind of why I'm like, come on, guys, stop asking Jonathan Taylor all these questions. He's going to keep dancing around them. He's not going to give you the answer you want. There's no point. Let's talk about some of the other good things that we've seen, like Bernhard Raimann having a pretty good preseason training camp. We'll talk more about all that in a minute after we're done talking about JT. But, Chris Ballard says, he was very honest with Jonathan Taylor. He's always been honest. Now, he did say that he wished he did something a little differently. But, I mean, this is the first time they're going through this, and, that's all part of going through a situation like this is, and he also says that, it seems that Chris Ballard and Jonathan Taylor's agent really got into it as well. You could kind of tell when one of the media guys, when one of the members of the press asked him about Jonathan Taylor's agent, how has it affected communication, how has that been, how, with the Jim Irsay thing. And Chris Ballard responds with, wait, hold on, I completely lost my train of thought. Chris Ballard responded, hold on, I completely lost my train of thought. Oh my goodness, I completely lost my train of thought. So he chuckles before answering, so Chris Ballard chuckles before answering that question from the press, and then he answered it, oh my goodness. Then he answered it in a way where he's like, pointing fingers is not the way to solve this. It's not going to get better by pointing fingers. So it's telling me that he may have said some things he didn't want to say to the agent by accident. But he's been honest. He's been as honest as he could. And even when the agent and Jonathan Taylor asked Chris Ballard, Chris Ballard's honesty can backfire a little bit. And when JT's agent and Chris Ballard were talking, the agent asked Chris Ballard if he would use a franchise tag if John Taylor played this fourth year. Chris Ballard didn't lie. He said it's a tool. He didn't say he would. He didn't say he wouldn't. Now, there's no questions that he doesn't take care of his players, though. Always takes care of the players. That's not a question. I agree with them. There. He's always taking care of the players very well. Always made sure, they could give them what they need, give them the best opportunities to succeed, and, pay them accordingly. Now, they never franchise tagged a player either in Chris Ballard's tenure. It's pretty impressive. It's a good track record there. Not, using the franchise tag and, since he's been here. It's, 7 years I think he's been here now. So that's pretty good. Now, kind of what I get from that JT situation. So he did say that he will talk to JT soon. He hasn't talked to JT in a while. That Shane has talked to JT, and I think it was yesterday. And no, it was a day prior to the presser. So Shane was talking. I apologize. I'm really struggling to talk. I've recorded this like probably 50, 60 times by now. Just really trying to get on the now. I've just been struggling to really, get it started, get it going good, get a good flow. But I think we got one going here. This is the video coming out. So, never use a franchise tag. Chris says JT's out to receive it. Chris said that the tag was a tool. Doesn't want to say something that is not true. JT says, well, he's a liar. We talked about that. So let's move on to the next thing now. So he was asked about the plans on bringing any running backs into the mix. He sounded optimistic for Zach Moss. It sounds like Zach Moss might be back sooner than expected. That would be really nice. He talked really good about Deion Jackson and Evan Hull. He also talked about, how this JT situation has overshadowed a few things like how Bernhard Raimann has done, during the preseason. Raimann has had an incredible training camp, practice, preseason. I think he's ready to take the next step up. He's been incredible. And, last year when he first stepped in, he didn't look great. As the season went on, he got better, and he played against some really good guys, some really good edge rushers later on too, and he only looked better. So I'm excited for Bernhard Raimann. He also said he was excited about Jalen Jones. Chris Ballard wasn't 100% sold on him, but it was one of the scouts. Remember who he said. It was one of the scouts that were really high on him, really pushing for him, and the scout was right. So round of applause to the scout. Good job. But this also went into cutting Darius Rush. He said so. He said Jalen. He was asked about Darius Rush and why they cut Darius Rush. He said Jalen Jones. Jalen Jones came out and he absolutely killed it. He's been impressing them like crazy. So Chris Ballard said he's very high on Tony Brown, cornerback that we also have. He thinks he has great character and he has a lot of upside. Didn't want to keep 7 corners, so that's why he had to cut Darius Rush. He thought the other guys that he kept were, better to keep, obviously. So he also said that Juju Brents has high potential. He's had a ton of injuries, so he's not listed as a starter. He's barely played, barely at any time in practice. But from the 2 weeks, he's had, Chris Ballard said he's coming along and he's playing pretty well. So he also talks about the 3 receivers in the roster, cutting Isaiah McKenzie, bringing them back. He said it was roster mechanic stuff. So they'll fill out the rest of the room. Said he will fill out the rest of the room. We'll see who he does fill it out with. He's very high on all these tight ends. They're all very young, all very good. And then, throughout the presser, when they talked about Anthony Richardson, it was all smiles when he was asked about him, talking about AR, and he loves the kid. Everyone loves Anthony Richardson and the type of mentality and leadership that he has brought to the team, the presence that he's brought to the quarterback situation, to the quarterback room that we haven't had in a long time since, I'd say Phillip Rivers. A lot of people go back and just say Andrew Luck, but Phillip Rivers brought a really good presence to this room. Not nearly as athletic as Andrew Luck or, obviously AR, but AR bring in a much-needed breath of fresh air to this Indianapolis Colts organization. So this was the press conference from Chris Ballard, keeping the 3 receivers. That was roster mechanic stuff. That was his excuse. That was what he was saying. So I guess we'll see. Pretty good presser. I just wish they kind of talked about other stuff more. Not really much else to recap. I don't want to go over Jonathan Taylor anymore. We've beaten that horse to, that horse has been dead a month ago, 2 weeks ago. I don't want to keep on going on and boring you guys. You guys have heard everything I have to say about John Taylor and all the other Colts podcasters. We're all basically saying very, very similar stuff. But that's it. Final roster explain why Darius Rush was cut. Having only 3 receivers and not really 3, but why he cut Isaiah McKenzie, brought him back. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for tuning in to the JDW Sports Talk Show, where every fan is welcome. Before we get out of here, I want to give our members their shout-outs. At the end of every video, we give our members a shout-out. Marshman Gunner and Red the Rat. Thank you guys for becoming members. I appreciate you guys, giving a little extra, supporting a little extra. I appreciate you guys from the bottom of my heart. I really do. Really enables me to, put a little extra into the show, and I appreciate that. And, if you're going to give a little extra, you're going to get a little extra. Don't ever feel like you have to become a member to be part of the community, but like I just said, if you give a little extra, you're going to get a little extra. And that's it for me. Thank you for tuning in to the JDW Sports Talk Show, where your fans welcome. If you enjoy, make sure to like, subscribe, put the post notification bell on so you don't miss any future videos. This is JDW Sports Talk Show, signing off.